It started on a cold and cloudy Monday morning in Los Angeles, the kind where the sky hangs heavy with gray and the world moves slower. Traffic was crawling on Hollywood Boulevard. Horns echoed in frustration, and people rushed past each other, without eye contact. Deep within this blur of motion and noise, a young woman stood quietly at the edge of a parking lot, holding the hand of a small child who looked no older than 5. Her name was Emily. She wore a faded denim jacket, 2 sizes, too large, and her shoes had holes in them. The boy, named Liam, had sleepy eyes and a crumpled backpack shaped like a dinosaur. They looked like they didn't belong in this part of town, where expensive cars gleamed and people wore designer sunglasses even when it wasn't sunny. Emily was a single mother who had come from San Bernardino that morning, after waking up. At 4 a.m., she'd taken 2 buses and walked nearly half a mile just to reach a downtown hotel for a cleaning job interview. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, choosing instead to make sure Liam had his cereal before they left. The hotel lobby had turned her away without much explanation, saying they'd found someone else. No apology, no eye contact. Just the crushing weight of disappointment. Again. She tried to stay strong for her son, giving him a tired smile, but her eyes were glassy and tired. She wasn't just tired from the journey. She was tired from life constantly pushing her back, down every time she stood up. Now she was walking toward a rideshare pickup zone to catch a cheap ride back, her phone nearly dead and her stomach growling. The lot was crowded with black SUVs and luxury sedans. Drivers held up phones with names. Voices shouted over idling engines, and she looked around nervously, unsure which car was hers. Then, just as Liam tugged on her hand asking if they could go home, a sleek black car pulled up right in front of them and the door opened automatically. The man inside didn't say anything. He just gave a small nod and glanced at his phone. Emily, assuming it was the rideshare she ordered, quickly ushered Liam into the back seat and slid in beside him. She let out a long breath, grateful to be sitting down, unaware that in that moment her life had just changed forever. Keanu Reeves had just finished a quiet lunch at a nearby diner. He wasn't in disguise, just wearing a plain shirt and jeans as he preferred to move through the world unnoticed. His driver had gone to get the car, but Keanu often liked to sit up front, especially when he had time to think. He had just finished reading a script that left a heavy impression on him. One about loss, resilience, and a mother who'd do anything for her child. It echoed too much of his own life. As he opened the door and climbed into the car, he was so lost in thought that he didn't notice the woman and child sliding into the back moments later. The car pulled away from the curb and entered traffic. Emily was trying to keep Liam calm with a soft hum, but her fingers trembled as she checked her phone. The app showed the car had already started the ride, which felt odd, but she didn't have enough data to reload the screen. She leaned forward and gently asked, "Excuse me, are we headed to San Bernardino?" Keanu turned his head slightly, confused. "Sorry," he said, not in a rude way, but soft and surprised. You're in my car." The words hit Emily like a punch in the chest. "Oh no," she whispered, eyes wide. "I thought this was my ride. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean—" But Keanu held up his hand and smiled gently. "It's okay, really, it happens." He looked at the little boy who was now staring curiously at him. "Where are you both going?" "We were heading home. I thought this was the rideshare. I'm really sorry, I can get out." "No," he interrupted calmly, waving off the idea. "You're already in. It's cold. He looks tired. I'll take you. It's no trouble." Emily didn't recognize him yet. She only knew that this kind man was offering to drive them over 50 miles back home. No stranger had ever done something like that. "I don't want to bother you." "You're not," he said simply. And there was something about his voice. Calm. Safe. Kind. As the car drove on, Liam grew bolder. He asked the man what his name was. Keanu chuckled and said, "Keanu." Liam tilted his head. "That's a funny name." "I know." Keanu smiled. "It means cool breeze over the mountains." Emily looked up, her face slowly shifting as realization dawned. Her eyes widened and her lips parted. She'd seen that face before. The man from all those movies. The humble actor people talked about online. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Are you Keanu Reeves?" she asked, barely audible. "Sometimes," he said with a wink. "But today, I'm your ride." Her breath caught in her throat. I can't believe this." The rest of the ride became a surreal blend of small talk and silence. Emily told him, little by little, how she had lost her husband in a construction accident 2 years ago, how she'd been trying to raise Liam alone, taking odd jobs, sometimes sleeping in shelters, sometimes with friends. Liam had asthma, and the medical bills were piling up. And now, even the hotel job had slipped away. Keanu listened. Not just heard, but listened, with his full heart. He asked quiet questions, nodded, and never once looked at his phone. It wasn't pity in his eyes. It was something deeper. A quiet understanding. When they reached Emily's neighborhood, a small rundown complex with rusted fences and broken windows, Keanu stepped out first. He opened the door for Emily and Liam, helped carry the backpack, and looked around. "You live here?" he asked, not judging, just observing. "Yeah," she said, looking down. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, he pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. "Call this number tomorrow, tell them Keanu sent you." She blinked. "What is it?" "It's a job. Something that suits you better than cleaning hotel floors, trust me." "But why?" she asked. "You don't even know me." He looked her straight in the eyes. "I know kindness. I know strength. And I know when someone needs a hand, not a handout." As he turned to leave, Liam ran up and hugged his leg. "Thank you, Mr. Keanu." Keanu smiled, bent down and whispered, "You've got a brave mom, you know that?" Emily stood there long after the car drove off, holding the business card with both hands like it was gold. She had no idea that one ride, one mistaken step into a stranger's car would change the course of everything she thought she knew about her life. But just as she walked into the apartment, her phone buzzed with a notification from an unknown number. It said, "Thank you for reminding me what real strength looks like. Talk soon." And below that, a deposit of $1,000 showed up in her account. She gasped, her legs trembling. Then, outside, a black SUV parked across the street again. Someone stepped out, but it wasn't Keanu, and Emily's heart skipped a beat. The knock at the door came just as Emily was setting a small plate of plain toast and butter in front of Liam. It was all they had left until Friday. The sun hadn't yet climbed over the buildings outside, but light filtered in through the window blinds, casting long, tired shadows across the cramped living room. She froze, her hand hovering over the edge of the chipped table. Liam looked up with curious eyes. She wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody ever visited them, not even the neighbors. Her heart pounded. For a second, her mind went wild. What if it was someone from the building? A landlord asking for late rent again, or worse, someone trying to scam her? She tiptoed to the peephole. What she saw made her chest tighten. A tall, broad man in a suit stood on the other side of the door, not menacing but official. Behind him, the same black SUV from yesterday idled at the curb. The same one she had accidentally entered thinking it was her rideshare. This man wasn't Keanu Reeves, but he was clearly connected to him. With trembling hands, Emily opened the door a crack. "Yes?" The man smiled warmly. "Good morning, Miss Emily. My name is Jason. Mr. Reeves asked me to stop by and assist you with a few things. He mentioned he gave you his card." Her eyes darted down to the card still resting on the tiny side table inside. She hadn't dared to call yet. She was afraid. Afraid it had all been a dream. Afraid that if she reached out, the kindness would disappear like fog in sunlight. But now, standing in front of her was proof it was all real. "He did. But I didn't expect." Her voice trailed off. "He wants you to feel safe and supported. I've been instructed to escort you to a private location this morning, where you'll meet with someone from his team. They want to offer you a position, something stable. It's real, Miss Emily. She looked down at Liam, who was now standing beside her with wide eyes and his dino backpack in hand. She thought of all the nights she had cried quietly into a pillow so Liam wouldn't hear, of the job she'd begged for and been turned down, of the meal she had skipped just to feed her son, and now in the span of 24 hours her life was being pulled in a direction she hadn't even imagined possible. She nodded. Give me 10 minutes to get us ready. The drive was long, winding through streets she had never been on, with towering buildings and clean sidewalks. The SUV had soft leather seats, bottled water, and soft jazz playing on the radio. Liam was half asleep beside her, and she stared out the window in disbelief. She hadn't been in a car this nice since her husband died. Jason didn't speak much, but he seemed kind. When he parked in front of a low modern building with frosted glass windows, she stepped out slowly, still not fully sure this wasn't all some cruel dream. Inside, everything was clean and quiet. A smiling woman met her in the lobby and guided her to a private conference room, offering her tea, snacks, and juice for Liam. The woman introduced herself as Nadia and explained she worked with a foundation, started by Keanu himself. He meets people sometimes, she said gently. People who remind him of strength. People who don't give up even when the world makes it hard. And when he sees that, he acts. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, but blinked them back. She listened as Nadia explained that the foundation offered training, housing support, jobs in ethical companies run by people who valued empathy as much as skill. And then she handed Emily a tablet with a simple profile form to fill out. Her, skills, past work, dreams. Emily shook her head slowly. Dreams, she whispered. I stopped dreaming a long time ago. Then maybe, Nadia said with a smile, it's time to start again. As Liam played with toy blocks in the corner, Emily filled out the form. She talked about her high school diploma, her unfinished nursing courses, and her part-time work, at hospitals as a cleaner. And then, almost without realizing, she typed something she hadn't dared say aloud in years. I still want to be a nurse someday. Nadia looked over the form and nodded. I think we can help you get there. But just as Emily felt her chest lighten for the first time in years, Jason re-entered the room and whispered something to Nadia. Her expression changed. Not fear, but surprise. She excused herself quickly, leaving Emily confused. Liam didn't notice. He was building a little tower out of blocks, but Emily's stomach churned. After a few minutes, Jason returned alone. Miss Emily, I need to take you somewhere. It's nearby. It won't take long, but you need to come now. She stood, unsure, but his voice was calm. She followed. The car drove into a more industrial part of the city. Abandoned warehouses, empty lots, and chain-link fences passed by. Emily began to worry. Where are we going? She asked. To someone who has information about your husband. Her breath caught. But he's gone, she said slowly. He died. On site. They told me it was an accident. That's what they told you. He didn't say anything more. When they arrived at the location, a tall, weathered man was waiting outside a gate. His name was Calvin. He had once worked at the same construction site as Emily's husband, Derek. He looked nervous, glancing around as if afraid someone might see him. He invited them into a makeshift office behind a storage unit. There, with shaking hands, he pulled out a folder. I've been holding on to this, he said. I tried to speak up back then, but no one listened. They paid me to stay quiet. But then that actor, Keanu, he found me last week. He said it wasn't too late to do the right thing. Inside, the folder were photos, reports, signed documents. The scaffolding accident hadn't been an accident at all. The safety supervisor had ignored 3 warnings that week. The equipment was faulty, the support beams weren't secured, and someone had tried to cover it up. Derek had reported it 3 days before he died. But his report had been buried. Emily's hands shook as she read. Everything she thought she knew came undone in those pages. Derek had tried to save lives, and he had died because someone chose profit over people. She looked up, her throat dry. Why now? Because someone finally cared enough to dig. When she stepped back outside, The sun was setting in soft gold across the skyline. Her whole body trembled. She felt like screaming and crying at the same time. Jason gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mr. Reeves has already hired lawyers. Everything will come to light. You won't be alone." She couldn't speak. Her voice had vanished, but her tears finally came. On the way home, Liam slept with his head in her lap. The folder rested on her knees, and her phone buzzed once more. This time it was a voice note. From Keanu. "Hey Emily. I just wanted to say, I meant every word. And this isn't charity. This is justice. Someone wronged you. And I believe in people who still fight even when they're tired. You're not alone anymore. I'll be seeing you soon." Her hand clutched the phone. She closed her eyes. But as they pulled up to her apartment, a police car stood outside, lights flashing, and 2 officers stood by her door. Jason frowned and stepped out quickly. Emily stayed in the car, frozen, staring through the tinted window. Something had happened, and this time it wasn't about her past, it was about what came next. Emily felt her heart drop as she stared through the dark window of the SUV. The flashing blue and red lights made everything feel surreal, like a scene from a movie she didn't want to be in. Liam stirred awake beside her and looked up, confused. "Mom, are the police here for us?" His small voice broke her trance. She didn't answer. She didn't know how. She reached down, gently stroked his messy hair and whispered, "Stay right here, baby." As Jason stepped ahead to talk to the officers, Emily slowly opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. The night air felt colder than it should have been. One of the officers, a tall woman with tired eyes and a calm expression, turned toward her and asked, "Are you Emily Roberts?" Emily nodded. Her throat tightened. The officer softened her voice. "We received a report. Someone tried to break into your apartment about 20 minutes ago." Her stomach flipped. "What?" "A neighbor saw a man trying to force your door open. He was spooked when they called out and ran. We're checking security footage, but you should know he left something behind." She gestured toward the second officer who held a sealed plastic bag. Inside it was a worn brown envelope. On the front, in shaky writing, were the words, "Don't trust them." Emily's knees nearly gave out. Jason caught her arm just in time. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Who would do this? I don't have enemies. I'm just no one." The officer shook her head. "You're not no one. Someone clearly wanted to warn you or scare you." Emily didn't sleep that night, even after the police left. Even after Jason checked every room of the apartment and made sure it was safe. Even after Liam snuggled into her side and fell back asleep. Her mind raced. Who had left the envelope? What did they mean by "don't trust them"? And who exactly was them? The next morning, Jason returned with news. "Keanu wants you and Liam to stay somewhere safer for now," he said gently. "He's already arranged a place, secure, quiet, comfortable." Emily wanted to refuse. She didn't like the idea of running away, but she also didn't want to risk Liam's safety. Her instincts told her this wasn't just a random break-in. Something bigger was at play, maybe connected to Derek's death, maybe even deeper than that. The new place was a small guest house, tucked behind tall hedges in Brentwood, part of a private property that belonged to one of Keanu's friends, a retired cinematographer who wasn't in town. It had a small kitchen, 2 cozy bedrooms, and a fenced backyard where Liam could play. As soon as they arrived, Emily felt her shoulders ease just a little. It wasn't home, but it felt safe. For now. A few hours later, as Liam napped, Jason returned again. This time he wasn't alone. With him was a woman named Sophie. She had soft brown curls and wore a dark gray blazer with no jewelry. Her voice was gentle but direct. "I work with a private investigation team Mr. Reeves hired. He asked us to go deeper into your husband's case. What we found is troubling." Emily sat frozen on the couch listening as Sophie explained. "Your husband had made multiple complaints about unsafe conditions," she said. 3 co-workers confirmed that he had an argument with the site supervisor 2 days before the fall. Apparently, Derek threatened to report them to the state safety board. Emily's eyes narrowed. And then he just falls? Sophie nodded grimly. And here's the worst part. After his death, the supervisor was quietly transferred to another project and given a raise. No disciplinary action. No investigation. Emily's fist clenched. Why wasn't I told? Because the company settled. They sent you a small insurance payout, didn't they? Yes, Emily said bitterly. $3,000 and a pamphlet about grief. Exactly. They settled quickly to avoid further questions. And they counted on you not having the resources to dig. But why now? Why would someone break into my place? Because you're talking now. Because people are listening now. Because Keanu is involved. Emily looked down at her hands. They were trembling again. Sophie pulled out another file. There's one more thing. The night your husband died, someone else took photos of the site. A part-time worker who left the city shortly after. He recently contacted us after hearing. We were looking into the case, he's willing to testify. And the photos show a missing bolt in the beam Derek fell from. They knew it was unstable? Emily asked, barely above a whisper. Yes. And they hid it. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away. What happens now? With your permission, we go public. Expose the company. Bring everything into the light. Keanu's lawyers are ready. Emily took a deep breath. Do it. The next few days passed like a whirlwind. Meetings, statements, preparing documents. Everything was moving fast. And all the while, Keanu never called attention to himself. He stayed in the background, letting the process speak for itself. But Emily knew he was there. Sometimes she'd find little notes on the kitchen counter with soft encouragements. You're stronger than you think. Or, Liam smiled today. You're doing something right. Then one afternoon, Jason drove her to a studio lot. Not for anything legal this time, but for something else entirely. When they entered the room, Emily was stunned to see Keanu sitting on a simple folding chair, holding a script in his hand. No crowd, no cameras, just him. I figured we'd finally meet again, he said with a gentle smile. You've had a crazy week. You could say that, Emily replied, her voice shaking with emotion. He gestured for her to sit. I wanted to talk. One-on-one. No assistants, no lawyers, just us. And there, under soft overhead lights, Emily told him everything she hadn't told anyone else. The loneliness. The nights she sat by the window waiting for Derek to come home. The shame of asking for help. The guilt of sometimes wondering if Liam would have been better off with someone else. The moments where hope felt like something reserved for other people. Keanu listened just as he had before, not interrupting once. Then he leaned forward. Emily, I've met a lot of people in my life. Some good, some fake, some broken. But you have a kind of strength I admire. Most people would have given up by now, but you didn't. She looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. What choice did I have? You had every choice. And you chose to keep going. That matters. They sat in silence for a moment. Then, he said, I'm funding a scholarship for parents who want to return to school. It'll cover full tuition, books, childcare. I was going to give it quietly, but now I want the first one to have your name on it. Her mouth dropped open. Keanu, I can't accept that. You can, he said simply. Not because you need saving, but because the world needs more nurses like you. More mothers like you, more people like you. She cried then. Not quiet tears, but full, broken sobs that had been trapped for years. And Keanu reached across the small table and held her hand, letting her grieve the life she'd lost and the new one she was just starting to see. But just as the sun set outside the studio lot, Keanu's phone buzzed. He read the message, and his face changed. Emily saw it. What is it? He stood slowly. We need to go. Something's happened at the foundation office. She grabbed her bag. What happened? Someone broke in? Her heart sank again. What were they looking for? Keanu turned to her, his expression unreadable. You. The drive-through. Los Angeles was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Emily sat in the back seat beside Liam, clutching him close as he drifted to sleep again. She didn't want him to hear the fear in her voice or see it in her eyes. The city lights passed by in long blurs, casting flickers of red and white across the windows. Keanu sat in the front passenger seat beside Jason, his jaw tight and his phone resting in his lap, screen still glowing from the last message. No one spoke until they reached the foundation building. What had once been a safe and quiet place now stood in chaos. Police tape cordoned off the front entrance. A few officers walked in and out of the glass doors, talking to staff and collecting evidence. Shattered pieces of a security camera lay on the ground like broken bones. Inside, lights flickered above, the reception area, and the worst part, nothing had been stolen. Not cash, not equipment, just one file, one single folder, Emily's, her name, her story. Every document about her life that the foundation had gathered to help her case, gone. They weren't here to steal, Keanu said quietly as he walked beside her through the mess. They were here to silence. Emily stood frozen as the realization hit her. Someone out there wanted to shut her down. Someone powerful enough to send a warning, smart enough to do it without leaving fingerprints, and cruel enough to make her feel like the walls were closing in. We have to stop, she whispered. They know everything now. My address. Liam's, school, everything. Keanu turned to her, eyes steady. That's why we don't stop. If you walk away now, they win, and they'll keep doing this to other families. She shook her head, her breath trembling. But Liam is safe, and he's proud of you. Trust me, Emily. I've seen people fold under pressure, but I've also seen people rise, and I know which one you are. That night, back at the guest house, Emily barely slept. She stared at the ceiling long after the stars had faded and dawn crept through the curtains. Her thoughts spiraled in every direction. Should she run? Should she stay? What if something happened to Liam? But then, just before the sun rose, Liam crawled into her bed and whispered, "You're the bravest mom in the whole world." And with that, her heart decided before her mind could catch up. She wouldn't run. Not this time. The next morning, she told Keanu she wanted to speak publicly. Her story, her voice, her truth. It was time. Are you sure? He asked. I need to show them I'm not afraid. Not anymore. Keanu nodded, and within hours his team arranged everything. A quiet interview on a trusted platform, no press circus, just a controlled space where Emily could finally be heard. As the cameras rolled and the lights dimmed, Emily sat across from a calm journalist who asked the first question, why now? Emily took a deep breath. Because for too long I thought being silent would keep me safe. But silence didn't protect me. It just made it easier for people to forget. And now I want them to remember. She spoke for nearly an hour. About Derek, about the accident, about the lies, about the system that failed them, and about Keanu, how a stranger's simple act of kindness led her to find courage again. When the interview ended, the journalist reached across and held her hand. Thank you for not giving up. That night, the video aired online. And something unexpected happened. Millions of people watched, not because of celebrity but because of truth. In the first 6 hours, the clip went viral. Thousands of comments poured in. Strangers offering support, other widows sharing their pain, former employees of the construction company confirming what she'd said. The internet lit up like wildfire, and within a day, the company's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. And that's when things took a darker turn. An anonymous video appeared online. Grainy footage taken with a phone camera, showing a man in a hard hat yelling at Derek, calling him a threat, warning him to stay quiet. Then the screen cut to black, followed by distorted audio. He asked for it. The video wasn't just chilling, it was proof. Real, raw proof. Keanu's team scrambled to trace its source, and soon they found out it had been uploaded from an anonymous location, likely someone inside the company who had finally cracked under. The weight of guilt. Investigators reopened the case. State Safety Board launched a full-scale audit, and reporters camped outside the company's headquarters. But behind the scenes, the threats escalated. Keanu moved Emily and Liam again, this time to a secure location just outside Malibu. A safe house with a gated perimeter and private security. Not because they were famous, but because they were finally dangerous to the people who wanted their story buried. Emily hated the isolation. The security cameras, the guard dogs. It all felt too much. She missed walking freely with Liam to get ice cream, missed the city noise, missed being just another face in the crowd, but she also knew that staying safe wasn't just for her anymore. Late one night, as she stood outside the safe house watching the ocean waves crash in the distance, Keanu joined her. He was quiet, hands in his pockets, face lit only by the moon. "You still think about running?" he asked. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Me too," he said softly. She looked at him surprised. "But you." He smiled faintly. "Being me doesn't make it easier. The world still tries to break people, in different ways. But I've learned that running just delays the pain. Standing up to it. That's where you find meaning." They stood in silence, the sound of waves between them. "Do you regret helping me?" she asked. He shook his head. "You helped me more." "How?" "You reminded me that small acts still matter, that the world can still be moved by truth, and that sometimes the person you least expect becomes the one who starts a fire. No one can put out." Her throat tightened, then his phone buzzed. He checked the screen. His face changed again. Emily tensed. "What now?" He turned the screen toward her. It was a photo. Her guest house, the one she'd left. The words "Stop Digging" were spray-painted across the door. Beneath it, a stuffed toy was torn in half. Liam's dinosaur backpack. Her heart shattered. Keanu looked into her eyes. "We're out of time." "What do we do?" she whispered. His answer came without pause. "We fight." For 2 days straight, the wind howled across the Malibu cliffs like a warning. The ocean below crashed against the rocks harder than usual, and the sky remained gray with heavy clouds, as if nature itself knew something was building. Inside the safe house, Emily paced the living room, eyes raw from sleepless nights. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every creak of the old wood, every bird on the roof. Her nerves were shot. Liam tried to stay cheerful, drawing pictures of dinosaurs and asking when they could go back home. But she couldn't answer him anymore. Because what was home now? Was it the old apartment with broken pipes and paper-thin walls? Or this place with guards at the gates and fear seeping in through every locked window? Emily couldn't shake the image of the spray-painted threat. "Stop digging." It wasn't just vandalism. It was a message, a warning, one that made her feel like she was being hunted. Keanu had increased security. Extra guards now patrolled the perimeter, and cameras were upgraded with facial tracking software. But still no one could sleep. Jason worked around the clock with investigators, while Sophie and her team combed through every new lead. The footage of the confrontation between Derek and the site supervisor had now reached national news. Morning talk shows played clips of Emily's interview. Influencers were reposting messages of support. The public was behind her, but with the light came shadows. Someone, maybe from the company, maybe someone else entirely, had launched a smear campaign online. Fake stories began circulating, accusing Emily of fabricating her story for money. Bots flooded social media with claims that she was being used as a pawn by leftist celebrities. And worst of all, anonymous messages were being sent to her phone at all hours of the night. Some were just words. Others were photos of her and Liam, taken from a distance. The world was watching, and so were the people who wanted her silenced. Then, early one morning, Jason burst through the safe house door, his face pale and eyes filled with a mix of urgency and confusion. He had just returned from meeting a man who had called Keanu's Team anonymously. The man claimed to have worked in internal compliance at the construction company years ago. He never met Derek but had stumbled upon archived documents that revealed something no one saw coming. Emily, Jason said, sitting across from her. Derek didn't just threaten to report safety violations. He was working with someone from inside. She blinked. Who? Jason hesitated. A woman named Rachel Maynard. She was part of the company's safety auditing division. But a week after Derek's death, she resigned and disappeared. Keanu stepped forward. We think she went into hiding. Why? Emily whispered. Because, Jason said, pulling a document from his folder. This memo was never filed. It's signed by both Derek and Rachel. It outlines a massive cover-up involving multiple project sites, unsafe equipment, and illegal shortcuts taken by management. If it had gone public, it would have destroyed the company. Derek and Rachel tried to report it. And then he died. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, her whole body shaking. She might still be alive, Jason added. And if we find her, she might have the original documents. Keanu paced the room, deep in thought. We need to find her before they do. How? Emily asked, breathless. We think she's somewhere in San Luis Obispo, Jason said. She used her old ID number to register for a medical clinic last year. That's our only lead. Emily stood up. Then let's go. Keanu looked at her with surprise. Are you sure? You said it yourself, she replied. We fight, and this might be our only shot. Hours later, they were on the road. Keanu drove a different car this time, a gray pickup truck with tinted windows. Emily sat in the back with Liam, holding his hand tight as he slept against her arm. The ride was long and quiet, the hills rolling by under a soft mist. Every mile closer to San Luis Obispo felt like a step deeper into a mystery she wasn't sure she was ready to solve. When they arrived in the small town, the air was colder and the streets quiet. Jason had arranged for a local contact to guide them. The address led to a modest trailer park on the edge of town, surrounded by tall, dry grass and a chain-link fence. They parked discreetly nearby. Keanu turned to Emily. You want to stay? With Liam? We'll go talk to her. But she shook her head. I'm going. The trailer was faded blue, with wind chimes made of spoons hanging by the door. They knocked softly. No answer. Keanu knocked again. Still nothing. Then, just as they were about to walk away, the door creaked open. A woman peeked out, eyes cautious, skin pale. Her hair was graying and pulled back in a tight ponytail. She looked tired, like someone who had been running from ghosts for too long. Rachel? Jason asked gently. Her eyes darted between them. Who sent you? Derek Roberts, Emily said, voice shaking. Rachel's breath caught. She opened the door wider. Inside the trailer, everything was minimal, survival-based. Canned food, a single bed, no television, just books, files, and a corkboard covered in pinned articles and notes. Rachel poured them tea and sat quietly. I thought they'd come for me by now, she whispered. Emily leaned forward. They might. That's why we need your help. Please. Rachel stared at her hands for a long time before speaking. I tried to get the truth out back then. No one wanted to listen. They paid off the reporters, threatened my brother. I ran, Keanu said softly. But you kept the documents, didn't you? Rachel stood slowly, walked over to a locked cabinet and pulled out a thick black binder. She laid it on the table. Everything, signed, dated, with photos, the full timeline of violations, bribes, and falsified reports. Derek was brave. He wanted to blow it wide open. Emily opened the binder, her hands trembling. As she flipped through the pages, she could barely believe what she saw. Signatures from executives, emails authorizing cost-cutting measures that led to injuries. Note Derek had written in the margin of one report. This is going to get someone killed. It was all there, and now it was in her hands. But just as they prepared to leave, Jason's phone rang. His face paled again. The safe house was breached, he said quietly. They found it empty. Our security team held them off, but whoever it was, They were looking for something. Emily clutched Liam tighter. Keanu took a breath and looked at the sky through the trailer window. We're running out of time. Then what do we do now? Emily asked. He looked back at her. We go public with everything. Not just an interview, not just a clip. We hold a press conference, live, real time, with the evidence, with Rachel, and with you. What if they come after us? She asked. Keanu stepped forward. Then let them. Because this time, we won't be hiding. They will. As the sun set behind the distant hills, painting the sky in burning orange and deep red, Emily felt something shift inside her. She was scared, but she was no longer broken. She held the binder to her chest like a shield and looked out the window. Tomorrow, she would face the world. And this time, she wouldn't be alone. The sky over Los Angeles was bright and cloudless, but the air was heavy with something else, something harder to name. In a secured corner of downtown, outside a wide marble building with towering glass walls, dozens of reporters were already gathering, their cameras stacked like metal soldiers, their microphones angled toward the small podium that had been placed on the steps. The entire front of the building was sealed off by private security and city police. Yellow tape and temporary fences kept back the crowd that had started forming hours ago. Activists, grieving families, curious bystanders, and strangers holding hand-drawn signs that read, "Justice for Derek," "Listen to Emily," and "Truth is louder than silence." Behind the building, in a quiet room surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows and soft light, Emily stood in front of a mirror, her hands shaking slightly as she buttoned the simple gray blouse she had borrowed from Rachel. Liam was sitting on a nearby bench swinging his feet, humming a tune softly under his breath, not fully aware of the storm outside, but enough to know his mom needed him calm. Keanu stood behind her, watching in silence. He didn't say much, not because he had nothing to offer, but because he knew some moments demanded stillness. Sometimes the most powerful support came not from words, but presence. "You okay?" he finally asked, his voice low. Emily met his eyes in the mirror. "I'm not sure." "You don't have to be. You just have to speak the truth." She nodded slowly, then turned around, holding a single sheet of paper in her hand. Her speech, not long, not rehearsed by anyone, just her words from the heart. Rachel entered quietly, carrying the black binder filled with every piece of evidence they had collected. Documents, emails, photos, memos, everything that could destroy the company that had tried so hard to destroy her. When they stepped out onto the marble steps, the crowd went completely silent. For a few seconds there was only the wind. Then Emily stepped to the podium, took a breath, and began. "My name is Emily Roberts. I'm not famous. I'm not powerful. I'm not rich. I'm a mother, a widow. And until recently I was invisible." She paused, letting the words settle. 2 years ago, my husband Derek died on a construction site. They told me it was an accident. They gave me a check. They said to move on. I tried. I tried so hard. But I knew something wasn't right. I knew he was trying to do the right thing before he died. And I couldn't let that disappear. As she spoke, cameras flashed and reporters scribbled notes, but she didn't look at them. She kept her eyes forward, voice steady. I thought no one would ever care. But one day by accident I got into the wrong car, and sitting in that car was a man who didn't just listen, he believed me. He used his voice, his resources, and his heart to help me find the truth. That man was Keanu Reeves. There was a stir in the crowd as people turned to look at him, but he didn't step forward. He stayed back, arms folded, quietly watching the woman who had once sat in his back seat, unsure if she'd have dinner for her child that night, now standing tall in front of the world. This binder, Emily continued, holding it up, contains the truth. My husband tried to report safety violations. He tried to protect others, and because of that, he was silenced. But today, we break that silence. She handed the binder to the lead investigator beside her, Rachel followed with another statement, citing dates, names, and project numbers. It was all real, undeniable. The press conference became a storm of attention, live streamed across the country, trending online within minutes. Supporters gathered at corporate offices demanding resignations. City officials promised full cooperation with law enforcement. And by sundown, the board of the construction company had released a statement confirming internal investigation had begun. But something else happened too. Something no one had expected. Dozens of other families came forward, workers injured on sites, wives who had lost husbands, siblings who'd buried brothers and never got answers. They sent emails, video messages, and letters. "Thank you," they wrote. "You gave us courage." When Emily returned to the safe house that night, she was quiet. Liam fell asleep early, exhausted from the day. Keanu sat beside her in the garden, both of them wrapped in blankets, a cup of tea in her hand. "You did it," he said. She shook her head. "We did." He smiled faintly. "It started with you." She looked at the stars. "I don't know what comes next. Maybe you're not supposed to yet. Sometimes healing doesn't come with a clear path. Sometimes it's messy, confusing. But it comes." There was silence between them. Then Keanu pulled something from his coat pocket. A folded letter. "What's this?" Emily asked. "A scholarship acceptance letter. You're officially enrolled in the nursing program at Pacific Hills College. Part-time, flexible schedule, starts in the fall." She blinked. "You already applied? You wrote your dream on that tablet," he said. "I just made sure someone read it." Tears filled her eyes. She clutched the paper like it was gold. "You'll make a great nurse," he added softly. She nodded, unable to speak. Before leaving that night, Keanu crouched beside Liam's bed, gently tucking the boy's blanket around his shoulders. "Thank you for taking care of your mom," he whispered. Liam, barely awake, mumbled, "I like you, Mr. Keanu. I like you too, little man." Outside, the wind was softer now. No more howling, just a peaceful breeze. In the days that followed, everything changed. The company's CEO resigned. 3 executives were indicted. A federal safety task force was created. And the Derek Roberts Reform Bill was introduced in Congress to protect whistleblowers on dangerous job sites. But more importantly, Emily changed. She no longer walked with her head down, no longer whispered her thoughts. No longer apologized for surviving. She spoke at schools, at labor unions, on podcasts, always simple, always humble, always honest. And everywhere she went, people listened, because it wasn't just about a widow or a celebrity or a tragedy. It was about what happens when one voice refuses to stay quiet. What happens when a single act of kindness, like sitting quietly and listening to a tired woman in the back of a car, sparks a fire big enough to burn away lies. One day, almost a year later, Emily stood outside a university auditorium after speaking to a group of young mothers returning to school. The sun was warm on her skin and she laughed with them, signing copies of her new book. Just then, a motorcycle rolled up quietly in the distance. It was Keanu. He took off his helmet, smiling. "You're late," she teased. "Traffic." He grinned. "I heard you were giving out wisdom today. Thought I'd stop by." She walked over and hugged him. Not a quick one, but a long one filled with quiet thanks. "You saved my life," she whispered. "No," he said. "You just needed someone to remind you what you already had inside." And as they stood under the sun, surrounded by life, noise, and possibility, Emily knew. Sometimes the wrong car leads to the right place, and sometimes it's not a mistake at all.